Software products demand excellent quality all the time. Now, in order to ensure delivery of a quality product, engineers involved in testing the product normally adopt various testing approaches such as functional, UI, security, and database. Hi everyone, this is Shaintani from Edureka, and today we will be talking about one such tool known as the JMeter. So let's begin with today's agenda. So first we will see what is JMeter, and then we will see why do we need the JMeter tool. Next up, we will have a look at some of the advantages of JMeter and some of the elements that are included in the JMeter tool. And finally, I'll show you the installation process and how it is actually used for load testing and performance testing. So let's begin. Now, what is a JMeter? So the Apache JMeter is a Java open source software that is used as a load testing tool for analyzing and measuring the performance of a variety of services. Now, usually we tend to follow the trends in testing and forget to pay importance to verifying whether the product meets expected or required performance. Now, unfortunately, we figure out this pitfall post delivery of the product. Nowadays, performance is an inevitable factor, especially for web and mobile applications, as the user strength is very huge for each application, even if it is not to be expected all the time. Now, in order to cope up with such situations of load, we need a handy tool, and that's exactly where the Apache JMeter comes into play. Now, before we get to know more about the JMeter tool, we first need to understand what is performance testing. Now, it is very important to verify whether the product meets expected or required performance. Now, performance testing is defined as a type of software testing to ensure software applications that will perform well under their expected workload. Now, it focuses on certain factors of a software program, such as the speed, scalability, and stability. Now, performance testing is checking whether the application under test satisfies required benchmarks on both load and stress. Now, load testing is testing to see whether the system or application under test is able to handle the required number of concurrent user accesses on web server without any failure. And the stress testing is testing to see how the web server copes up with high load and limited resources, that is, under constrained conditions. Here we just determine what the maximum load is that the web server can handle. Now, performance testing has much significance in real time, particularly from a point of view of customer satisfaction and ROI. Now, we have come across several performance testing tools in our testing experience and have found HP, LoadRunner, OpenSTA, Load Impact, and many more popular ones. But JMeter is one of the much preferred one among testers worldwide. Now let's have a look at the advantages that makes JMeter the most preferable one. JMeter is open source and built in Java platform. It is highly extensible and platform independent. Also, it is very user friendly. Now JMeter has a comprehensive GUI which helps to create test plan and configure the elements. Now adding elements is easy on JMeter. Just right-click on the tree scenario and add what you need to do. Now, the newest version allows user to change look and feel. JMeter supports scripting, but it is not necessary because you can run a complete load test without knowing a bit of code. JMeter stores its test plans in XML format. It means you can generate a test plan using a text editor. Next advantage is the support. Now, basically, it is designed for performance testing, but also supports other non-functional tests such as stress testing, distributed testing, web service testing by creating test plans. Also, it provides supports for protocols such as the HTTP, JDBC, SOAP, JMS, and FTP. Now, JMeter has a wide range of users, so there is open source community there to help others. Next up is the comprehensive documentation. Now, this is one of the most important things to be highlighted. Because of its robust documentation, user can have a clear idea on each and every step, starting from scratch, including installation and configuration of the test settings, and generating final report. The next advantage is the recording. Now, JMeter allows user to record HTTP or HTTPS to create test plan using recording facility. Now we use proxy server that allows JMeter to watch and record your actions while you browse your web application with your normal browser. And the final one is reporting. Now JMeter supports dashboard report generation. A host of reports are generated through JMeter, which helps the user to understand performance test execution results. So now that you know what is JMeter and what are the advantages, let's begin with the installation process. Now before installing JMeter, you must ensure that you already have Java installed in your system. So in order to check if Java is already there in your system, you can just open the command prompt and check for the Java version. So here you can see I already have the Java version 10.0.2 installed here. So now we are all set to download the JMeter. So now in order to install JMeter, we go to the official website, that is the jmeter.apache.org. Now here you have the binaries, so you can download any of these TGP or zip file from the Apache JMeter website. Now JMeter is pure Java desktop application and it requires a fully compliant JVM 6 or higher. So you first have to check if you have the Java SE development kit installed or not. And here you can see that the latest version of JMeter available is the 5.1. So you can download any of these binaries. Now installation of JMeter is extremely easy and simple. So you can simply unzip the zip or the tar file into the directory where you want the JMeter to be installed. There is no tedious installation screen to deal with. Now once the download is complete, you can go into your downloads and find that the Apache JMeter file is already there, and inside bin you will get to see all these files of JMeter. Now if you are using Windows, you just have to run the file the jmeter.bat to start the JMeter in the GUI mode. So I have already installed the JMeter in my system and I have also created a shortcut in the desktop. So let's open this and show you how it actually looks. Now you can see that our Apache JMeter is getting started. So this is exactly how it looks. So this is our final Apache JMeter GUI. Now using this we can perform the testing for any website or any software program. Now before starting any performance testing, let's discuss some of the important elements that are present in the JMeter. Now there are four important elements that are the thread group, samplers, listeners and configurations. Now first we create a test plan. So it is a container which describes what to and how to test. Here you can see how it looks like, just how I have shown you that how the GUI of the Apache JMeter exactly looks like. Now a complete test plan consists of one or more elements such as the thread groups, logic controllers, sample generating controllers, etc. It describes the behavior of the element. Now once we configure the element, we just save it. Then we run the test plan and analyze the test result from various graphical formats such as tree, table and graph. Now it is quite difficult for humans to execute performance testing manually. So it is inevitable that we depend on a performance testing tool to do the job. When we go for simply the best solution in all aspects of software development, why not in the matter of performance testing too? Now JMeter is the final words in this department to be used for ensuring quality deliveries in time. So the first element is the thread group. Now thread groups is a collection of threads. Each thread represents one user using the application under test. Basically, each thread simulates one real user request to the server. And the controls for a thread group allow you to set the number of threads for each group. For example, if you set the number of threads as 100, JMeter will create and simulate 100 user requests to the server under test. The next element is the samplers. Now, as we know already that JMeter supports testing HTTP, FTP, JDBC and many other protocols. We know that thread groups simulate user requests to the server. But how does a thread group know which type of request it needs to make? The answer is samplers. The user request could be FTP request, HTTP request, JDBC request, etc. Now for the FTP request, let's imagine that you want to perform test on the FTP server. Now you can use an FTP request sampler in JMeter to do this task. This controller lets you send an FTP download file or upload file request to an FTP server. Now the HTTP request lets you send an HTTP or HTTPS request to a web server. JMeter sends an HTTP request to Google website and retrieve HTML files or image from this website. Next is the JDBC request. Now this sampler lets you execute database performance testing. It basically sends a JDBC request to a database. And then we have the BSF sampler. Now this sampler allows you to write a sampler using a BSF scripting language. The access log sampler allows you to read access logs and generate HTTP requests. The log could be image, HTML, CSS, etc. Then we have the SMTP sampler. Now if you want to test a mail server, you can use the SMTP sampler. This sampler is used to send email messages using the SMTP protocol. Now moving on, the next element is the listeners. Now listeners show the results of the test execution. They can show results in a different format such as a tree, table, graph or log file. Now the graph result listeners display the server response times on a graph. View result tree show results of the user request in basic HTML format. And the table result shows summary of a test result in table format. And the log shows summary of a test results in the text file. Now the final important element is the configuration element. Now it basically sets up default and variables for later use by the samplers. Now for the CSV dataset config, suppose you want to test a website for 100 users signing in with different credentials, you do not need to record the script 100 times. You can parameterize the script to enter different login credentials. This login information could be stored in a text file. Now JMeter has an element that allows you to read different parameters from that text file. It is the CSV dataset config, which is used to read lines from a file and split them into variables. Then we have the HTTP cookie manager. Now HTTP cookie manager has the same feature as a web browser. Now if you have an HTTP request and the response contains a cookie, the cookie manager automatically stores that cookie and will use it for all future requests to that particular website. We also have the HTTP request default. Now this element lets you set default values that your HTTP request controllers use. For example, you're sending 100 HTTP requests to the server google.com. You would have to manually enter server name equal to google.com for all these 100 requests. Instead, you could add a single HTTP request defaults with the server name or IP field that is equal to google.com. Then we have the login config element. The login config element lets you add or override username and password settings in samplers. For example, if you want to simulate one user login to website facebook.com with user and password, you can use the login config element to add this user and password setting in a user request. So this was all about the different elements of JMeter. Now we will see how all of these elements work actually. So all we have to do is run the jmeter.bat and then finally we will get our JMeter tool running here. Now this is based on a Java application, so you need not worry about the operating system because it will be working the same in all the operating systems. So this is our home window and you can see two sections here. The left side frame will consist of all the elements of JMeter and the right side of the frame will consist of the configurations that we are going to change. So here we can see the configuration of the test plan window. Now test plan is basically like a container that will contain all your test plans that you will need to perform. So any kind of graph, results, samplers, listeners, anything will come under the test plan. So let's just give it a name as Edureka. So here I've changed the name and as soon as you click here, you can see the name here is also changed to Edureka. Now when I right click here, and go to add, so you can see a lot of elements that we can add here. So one of the most important ones is the threads. So we have discussed about the thread group. So we know that the thread group is basically a collection of threads, and each thread represents one user using the application under test. So here first we will be adding one thread group. Now let's rename this thread group as users. So here we have action to be taken after a sampler error. So what it basically means is that it's asking what should the thread do if there's an error that has occurred while performing the test. So here we have options like we can continue with our test or start next thread loop, stop thread or stop the test. So here we will be continuing with our test even if there's a sampler error. Now thread properties is one of the most important part here. We have number of threads, ramp up period in seconds, and the loop count, like if you want to count it forever or for some particular number of loops. So as of now all the values are 1, so we have one thread, one ramp up period and one loop count. Now let's go back and add a sampler now. So we already know that JMeter supports testing HTTP, FTP and all that. And the sampler is another important element of the JMeter. So here let's add another HTTP request. So the HTTP request will let you send an HTTP or HTTPS request to a web server. So we will be running a web application here. So I'll be renaming this one as homepage. So here we are giving the server of the website that we are going to perform the testing on. So let me take the Edureka blog website. So this is our Edureka blog page on which I'm going to perform the testing. So let me copy the URL here. So in the server name or IP, I'm going to paste the URL. But you have to remember here we are not going to use the HTTPS : and the /. So we would just be using the www.edureka.co/blog. Also, this last slash also indicates the path. So here we won't be writing this path. The path will be specified in this section. So here we have used the server name, that is the edureka.co/blog, and we have specified our path here. So for the root page, I'm just giving a / here. So now our HTTP request is ready. So we are going to perform our testing on this particular page, that is our Edureka blog page, and the path is also set. Now how do we get to know that what is the result of this testing? Now in order to view the result, we have to add a few more testing elements. So here we will be adding another element, that is the listener, and inside listener we have view results tree, we have view results in table. So we can select any of these as in how we want our result to be viewed. So we can view it in a graph, in tree or a table. So here first I'll be selecting view results in table. So here the result would be shown in the form of a table. Whenever I perform the testing, the result will be up here in the form of a table. So we just have to go inside the listeners because it shows the results of the test execution, and add the particular view we want. So I have selected view results in table. So now once we have done this, in order to run this test, first we have to save it. So I'm saving it in the desktop in the folder named as JMeter, and I'm naming it as Edureka test plan and saving it. So you must always save it if you want to reuse your test plan. Okay, so now that it's all done, let's finally run this and see how the performance testing works. So here we'll be starting our test. So you can see that the test is going on here. It shows the seconds that are taking. So this is the report that has been generated. So we have just performed one sample, one thread, because in our thread group section, we have given just one thread, one ramp up period and one loop count. So here you can see the result. So we have one sample, you can see the start time, at what time we have started the test, and then we have users 101. That is the thread name because we have just one thread and one user. And we have our label as homepage because we have named it as homepage, and it shows the sample time that has been taken. So we have a sample time in milliseconds, that is 4467. You can also see the status as green, which means it's performing well. And then here we have our bytes, sent bytes, latency, and the connection time. So you can see the connection time, that is the server request took 398 milliseconds. So now this was just a very basic test that we have performed. We have just taken one thread and we have shown the result in the form of a table. So now let's see what else we can do using our JMeter. So now let's go back to the users and let's increase the number of threads and see how it changes our values. So here I'll be using number of threads as 5. Let's increase our loop count as well. Let the loop count be 3 here. So now we have 5 threads, that is 5 users and 1 ramper period, and loop count as 3. Now let's go back to our home page and we have the same website in our server and the path is also specified. Now let's go back here. And before that, if you want to clear your previous results, then all you can do is just clear the history and see it's gone. So now again, first let's just save it and see what happens now that we have increased the number of threads and users. So let's run this. So now you can see that we have 5 threads and 3 loops. So you can see that we have user 1 of 1, 1 of 2, 1 of 3, 1 of 4, and 1 of 5. So what happens basically here is we have 5 users, that is 5 threads, and we have our loop count as 3. So all the 5 threads will be inside the loop count 3. So you can see all of these have been executed 3 times, all the 5 threads. So here also you can see the status is green, it's performing well, the testing is all fine, and we have the status as green. And we have our bytes, sent bytes, the latency, and the connection time as well. So now let's see how we can view our results in some other view. So let's go to add and listener, and inside this we also have view results tree and we also have graph. So let's go for view results tree and run the test again because we have the same values, and let's see how it works in the tree. So here you can see that in just a tree format, it shows you that our home page status has been performed these many times and it's performing well because the status here is green. Now let's check out how a graph will work. So for this, we have to select the graph results. So you can see that here we have graphs to display as our data will be shown, the average, median, deviation, and the throughput. So now let's run this and see how it works. So you can see that here the number of samples are increasing and our latest sample throughput time, everything is increasing, and here you can see the graph. So we had 5 threads and we had 3 loops. So we had total number of samples as 15. So the graph doesn't show a huge deviation, but in our table we can see a proper result where you can see all the bytes, sent bytes, latency, connected time values clearly, and also get to know about the status. So you can always view your result in a table, tree, graph, or a log format. So now you have already learned about the thread group, the listeners, the samplers. Let's see how the configuration element works. So this is how basically a JMeter works. Now you know all the important elements that you can use inside the JMeter. That is, you have the thread group. First, you have the test plan where you get to configure your elements. Then inside that, you have your thread group, listeners, samplers, and how you want to view your result. You can view it in table, tree, graph, or in the form of a log. Now you know what is a thread group and how you can change the number of threads and the loop counts and how it affects your testing. Also, you can go inside that and create your HTTP request and also view your result in the way you want it to. So now this was just the beginning and this was the very basic of how you can perform your test plan. But these are the most important things that you need to keep in mind before performing any testing on any web page or any website. So I hope now you have understood how it actually works. So from the installation process to finally performing your first test plan, this is how JMeter will help you. Stay tuned for more such videos where you will get to perform more testings using different plugins as well. And I hope you have liked this video, so do let us know about your opinion in the comment section below. Till then, thank you and happy learning.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!